All right, recording. Everything looks decent. I'm here to talk about season 3 of Close Enough. It's a show. Creator credit goes to J.G. Quintel, who is most well known for a regular show on Cartoon Network, which is a show that I never really got into back in the day, 5,000 years ago when that premiered. And even Close Enough, I haven't been a dedicated viewer. In fact, I had this impression that season 3 of the show must have come out like 5 years ago or something, and I was thinking, oh yeah, this is yet another show where they're taking just decent breaks between production, and so you might have a few years of a gap between one season and the next. But no, season 1 of Close Enough premiered in like summer 2020, which is difficult for me to believe. Relatable thing about how time feels different now. But I decided to watch season 3 of Close Enough. It is now on HBO Max. That's fine by me because I have a sign-in, and I watched it. I watched season 3. It has 8 episodes. Well, they do like 11-minute, I would call them 11-minute episodes, but then what do we call the full 22-minute slot? Anyway, I think the 11-minute runtimes are probably a good choice for a show like this with the kind of setup that it has, the types of storylines and wacky situations they get our characters into. It feels kind of nice to get the relatively swift resolution to each of the tiny little story arcs, and despite the fact that you start to feel the similarities of story content or outcomes and lessons learned after the fact, I think it works just fine. It's also pretty interesting in just how this is potentially Cartoon Network's foray into straight up adult animation. I mean, we do have Adult Swim, which is the Cartoon Network umbrella, but a show like Close Enough, in my eyes, doesn't really fit the Adult Swim branding. It's not really the same tone as just about every Adult Swim show that I can think of. It's a little bit kinder, it's a little bit lighter. It doesn't feel like it's aimed more or less 100% at like 14 and 15-year-old suburban boys. It is a little bit different, but at the same time, it has such close ties to regular show, just in terms of creative direction, art style, even just, I don't know, general execution in a sense. I guess you could even argue that there's a similar tone to regular show happening here. That's maybe one of the most interesting aspects of Close Enough, is that, hey, if this is like really successful, and I don't know how much money it's bringing in, but people seem to like the show well enough, gets decent ratings. If it works, if it really works, or if it really takes off all of a sudden, who knows? Cartoon Network could end up sort of aging up some of their projects, I guess that's the way to put it. We already know that Cartoon Network has been sort of a forerunner, an industry leader in terms of adult-friendly animation with plenty of their other shows. But something like this, it genuinely does feel like it's showing us a door. Here is a door. Through that door are some possibilities. Maybe they're good possibilities. Maybe they're lackluster possibilities. But either way, this is working just fine. And that's kind of the headline of my video, is that I have generally favorable impressions about season 3 of Close Enough. Prior to this, I had only seen, 5 or 6 episodes of probably season 1, I think. And even at the start of season 3 here, I felt kind of just about the whole thing. It just sort of felt like, okay, I know what this is. I remember these characters. I remember these performances. I remember this writing style, and I wasn't super enthused about how it all came together, and I'm still not. Like, Close Enough is not a show that blows my mind. It's not something that motivates me to come out here and try to be like, everybody has to watch this. It's like the greatest thing ever. It's groundbreaking. No, it is ultimately an adult animation sitcom. In fact, this time through, I was really surprised at just how similar this feels to a lot of the Fox animation domination stuff, the primetime stuff, Simpsons, Family Guy, Bob's Burgers, Duncanville. But I also think it's better than a lot of those shows. It shares a fairly similar structure. It has similar themes, I suppose, a similar approach to the moral of the story, rapid story resolutions at the end of each episode. There are tons of similarities, and somehow Close Enough manages to break away just a little tiny bit. Maybe part of what helps that out is the wackiness. I'm sure the story elements here and I don't know, calling them surreal elements feels a little bit lofty, but weird stuff happens. Weird stuff happens in this show, and it all gets wrapped up fairly tidily. Tidily, is that? Let's just go with it. And with those 11-minute runtimes again for each story arc, you feel like you're not super annoyed by any one plot. It's definitely pretty easy to binge. You're getting a certain amount of variety. And thankfully, like many of those other adult animation sitcoms, they rotate through the characters at a pretty good clip. So naturally, you might have one character you're not so crazy about, a couple of other characters that you really enjoy, and then another character who maybe feels like they haven't explored them all that much. Here we have our main cast. We're pretty much just sticking with them, but we rotate quite a bit. And so if it happens to be an episode, if it happens to be a mega episode, if you know what I mean, you can just kind of move through it, get a few laughs, walk away, do the dishes, and you're fine. Like you're not, it's not going to be 46 minutes before you get to move on to the next story. Can you tell that this doesn't really have a structure? I didn't even get to my notes yet. I have notes for other stuff. By the way, I'm thinking of doing a video series that goes episode by episode through Columbo, and right now the best title I came up with is the SS Columbo. So please leave your comments on whether or not that's a good name. I won't read the comments, but your voice will be heard by someone. Okay, specific stuff that I would like to talk about here. Very LA. It is very much based in LA, just like the real world LA. As someone who's lived in LA for too long, for too much time, I'm kind of split on the LA references and real world references in general. Like, yes, it fits the tone. It doesn't necessarily feel out of place, but at the same time, I have to wonder, like, how do other people who don't know very much about LA feel about this? Like, is it just kind of annoying? Does it feel like, I don't know, weirdly insidery or self-congratulatory in some way? Personally, I'm kind of fine with it. I also get that really basic and kind of stupid satisfaction of like, oh, I know that place. Like, that is a good visual representation of a place that I have been many times, or that I used to go to when I went outside. So that's, I guess I'm okay with it personally, but I would be interested to hear how other people feel about that aspect of the show. And overall, like, the premise here in Close Enough is somehow still kind of novel. If you're somehow not familiar with the premise, you have two relatively young parents who are not especially good at being parents, and so that's where a lot of the humor comes from with our main family, is that, oh, we have to figure out how to handle this problem, but we need to be sort of creative about it and us about it, as opposed to looking to time-honored traditions or, the old ways of doing things. Let's just try our best and see what happens, and basically all of the time, things work out just fine. Get some funnies in the meantime while they mess things up. It feels weird that this is one of the only shows, specifically one of the only animated shows, that seems to be covering this type of subject matter, because as we all know, as I know personally, plenty of people who grew up watching tons of television cartoons, and for whom continuing to watch cartoons as they got older, teenager, young adult, for whom that kind of thing was normalized, are now adults. And so it feels like there's a stronger market now for adult animation that's, trying to be very relatable to the situations of people in their, let's say late 20s, early 30s, etc. As that audience grows, why not have the entertainment grow with them? Kind of like, the Harry Potter series or any number of other franchises. Like, it seems like there's an opportunity to hit on this kind of subject matter in some really interesting ways. And as far as I know, Close Enough is probably one of the only animated shows doing it. And I have to applaud that about Close Enough. Like, hey, this is an opportunity. Sure, maybe a lot of people on the team, or just a handful of sort of leads on the team, happen to relate to this particular situation of being a young parent and not being especially good at it, and trying to figure your way through all these unique, weird situations. So good job. I don't personally relate to those aspects of the show. I don't relate to being a divorcee. I don't relate to having a young child. Thank Jesus. But still, I definitely know what it's like to barely have enough money to scrape by. So I guess there's that side of Close Enough as well, even though I feel like we need to have a very separate conversation about media that covers not having a lot of money, because that media is almost always exclusively created by people who now have money. So that's a whole, but that's no time for that today. So as I alluded to many minutes ago, at first I was watching season 3. I was like, nah, you know what? I just don't think this is for me. It seems kind of bland. The sense of humor isn't really my thing. The characters are whatever. And suddenly, I don't know, I wish I knew which episode it was exactly, but let's just guess and say episode 3 or 4 turned me around somehow. And it was probably just the humor. Ultimately, there are lots of moments where the jokes aren't necessarily my bag. They don't really get to me. And then there are other times where something really does. It might be a background sight gag kind of thing. It might be a one-off piece of dialogue that they just sort of move right past. But either way, I did laugh watching the show. And that's not something that I do often, unless the show's not supposed to be funny. And yeah, I laughed like, I don't know, at least 5 times. So I think that's kind of a win. I don't know, even if you grew up on like the early seasons of The Simpsons or something, like there's a lot here that sort of feels in that vein of just goofy and fun and not really taking itself seriously, which is a huge benefit for a show like this. I can't imagine anything worse than feeling like the show was like really intent on trying to tell you something important. Like that would just not gel with any other part of it. So yeah, relatively funny. Visually, I really don't know if there's that much to say. It's pretty typical American television animation. That is not to say that it looks bad. Absolutely not. Clearly, the animation team, storyboards, editors, everybody, the people working on the show definitely know what they're doing. They have made a show that looks very nice. It's not exactly visually stunning. You are not going to be just like weeping at the beauty of a few frames of movement. It's not that kind of thing. It looks okay, other than, I don't know, every time I look at our main couple, I just think like, why did the son of like one of the members of Spinal Tap marry Pam from The Office? Environments are fine, like I said. Specific references to LA landmarks and neighborhoods are done with a certain degree of accuracy, but it's still a very colorful world. You get plenty of saturation around. You get some nice textures. We even get some like watercolor paper looking textures for some skies and things. And yeah, if I have any small criticisms of like the writing and the humor overall, I mean, as I already said, I did find it funny enough to keep me watching, so no big complaints there. And I also think that trying to critique humor and like comedy writing is maybe a bad idea. I'm definitely not the person to do that. Regardless, just in terms of regular dialogue between characters, there's some of the like lingo and personality we get in some characters here that feels like almost one-to-one straight ripped from something like a regular show or one of the early 2010s Cartoon Network shows. And I do think that stuff is starting to feel a little bit outdated, like the weird, the quirky slang. That was some of the stuff where I felt like, okay, that maybe needs to move forward. That's maybe an area where we need to step up a little bit. Also, the sheer number of meta jokes is kind of a lot, especially when one segment of an entire episode here is just one giant whole thing of meta jokes about like the people who actually make the show over at the Cartoon Network offices up in Burbank. I think that's the only one, right? Here in town is the one up in Burbank. It's actually pretty close. Whoops. I mean, it's very far away. I don't live anywhere. Don't look for where I live. I'm just personally starting to get tired of the meta jokes of like characters referencing like, oh, that felt like half of an episode. We better stop there. Like that wasn't a very satisfying conclusion, or like you didn't explain that very well. And it's just a shrug. It's just a way for the writers to have a joke sort of, but also be like, yeah, I'm not going to spend more time like the technical side of this bit or whatever we're doing, this story element. Tiny little things about the writing. These are, I mean, even calling them critiques is probably too strong a term. I enjoyed the show's writing overall. As I've already gone over, I enjoy most of what's happening in the show. It's not something where you need to watch every previous episode to feel like you understand what's going on. So if you just want to hop into season 3, go for it. If you can already afford HBO Max, good for you. They have a couple of other good shows on there, and also Euphoria. What else? Wow, I've been talking for much longer than I thought I would. I thought this was going to be like 6-7 minute video tops, but this might even be like 17 minutes, so look out. I guess we can do the usual stuff. Did you like it? Did you like the show? Do you watch Close Enough? Did you watch Regular Show? I think a lot of people watched that one. I saw like 2. There's the big muscle guy. Also, I am getting a little bit tired of Jason Mantzoukas doing the same performance for his entire career. It's cool, man, you know, make your money, but yeah, you could try something different maybe. I don't know, just the yelling and it sounds like the same voice all the time. I don't know. Pretty pleasant experience. I'm kind of shocked that I just binged the whole thing on an afternoon while I'm waiting for a package to show up. Yeah, again, share your thoughts. Check it out if you feel like it. I'm sure they have some promotional clips up on YouTube if you're really hesitant about diving in for some reason. That's all for now. Thanks for stopping by.